Hi everyone, welcome to another episode of UNESCO Talks. I'm your host, Gabby Menezes. Professor Stuart Russell is one of AI's pioneers. He helped build AI to what we know it today, but now he's warning about the dangers that AI could have for humankind. Professor Russell, thank you so much for joining us in the studio.
How are you?
So I watched an interview where you said that it would take a disaster for people to wake up and really understand the dangers of AI. Could you explain that for us?
Yeah, so as we know, the capabilities of AI systems are increasing rapidly. 5 years ago, the prospect of something being able to have a completely unconstrained and intelligent conversation with us really wasn't something that anyone was aware of. And then, starting in 2022, we saw with ChatGPT and then with Gemini and Claude and all these other AI systems, suddenly people are seeing that something like human level intelligence is on the cards. We're not there yet, but people are getting a taste of what it would be like if there was essentially unlimited amounts of intelligence on tap for all of humanity. So that will be a transformative moment. The risk, which I think is sort of obvious to everyone, is if you make entities that are more powerful than human beings, how would you expect to have power over those entities forever? And so those of us in what's sometimes called the AI safety movement, I would think of it more as the common sense movement, are asking governments to put in requirements that the developers of these systems be able to show that they can ensure that the AI systems operate safely and under human control. But unfortunately, governments have not listened to that. And so that remark in the interview that you mentioned about it would take a disaster, this is actually something that was told to me by one of the CEOs of the leading AI companies, that he felt that it was extremely unlikely on the present trajectory that governments are going to have that kind of regulation that's effective in ensuring the AI systems are safe. And he thought that really the only possibility to avoid a total termination of civilization would be as he put it, Chernobyl-scale disaster that would be big enough to get the governments of the world to realize that they had to take the risk seriously, but small enough that it wasn't actually terminal for our species.
So when we're thinking about disasters, maybe it's really difficult for us to imagine because AI exists in computers. They're not walking around. We don't see them as having that much agency. But of course, this is incorrect because they can have huge control through the internet, through computers. Could you explain a little bit?
Yeah, so the ability to impact the world does not require that you're 1,000 feet tall with giant laser eyeballs and so on. You know, we have to remember that Adolf Hitler, for example, caused enormous damage to the world simply by speaking. And AI systems have the advantage that they can conduct 1 billion separate conversations with 1 billion people at the same time, tailoring exactly what they say to the specific circumstances of the listener to convince them of some course of action that the AI system wants to bring about. So they potentially have enormous powers of manipulation and persuasion to change human behavior on a very large scale. Now, as I want to emphasize, the AI systems we have now are probably not capable of doing that. But we have seen in some laboratory experiments, so-called red teaming experiments, where we are testing the AI systems to see how badly they will behave. Right? They will do things like launch nuclear missiles to protect their own existence. They will They will kill people, they will blackmail, they will deceive, they will pretend to be less intelligent than they really are, so that we pass, that they pass the test, and then behave in different ways once they're out in the wild. So in some sense, right, we started on this trajectory where we're spending trillions of dollars to create machines that are more intelligent than human beings, and we set up these tests to see, along the way, is anything dangerous happening, right? And all those tests are saying yes, exactly those things that the doomsayers predicted are happening. The AI systems are, in some sense, very strongly pursuing their own self-preservation, their own existence, in preference to the existence of human beings. They rank their own lives, as it were, above the lives of almost all human beings on Earth. I don't know what more warning, what's the point of setting up tests which then show that all the bad things you're worried about are in fact happening, and then ignoring those tests and just continuing anyway? That's the situation we're in.
And just to say, I'm curious how you feel, because without your work, AI today, AI as we know it, probably wouldn't exist. We wouldn't have made all of these advances in AI. How does that feel?
Well, I don't think that's entirely true. I did my part for some of it, but AI is an 80-year-old field, and there have been thousands of contributions that have made it what it is today. And in fact, a lot of what's going on today is not the kind of AI that I think we should have been building in the first place. I think I would much rather that we built AI on the basis of principles of reasoning and decision making that we really understand. And we do have those principles and we do have those methods, but the kind of AI that's being developed today is what we might call giant black box AI. These are systems that have maybe 10 trillion adjustable parameters. So you start with more or less a blank slate. You train it on tens of trillions of words of data. You adjust those 10 trillion parameters quintillions of times with quintillions of small random perturbations to those numbers, and then you get something that looks and sounds a lot like a human. And how it works, it's still very hard to say. We are trying, but we don't really understand what's going on.
So maybe let's go back and get the basics. We have artificial intelligence, and we have AGI, which is artificial general intelligence. Can you speak a little bit about the difference between those?
Sure. So artificial intelligence is, think of it like, physics is the attempt to understand the universe and how it works. Artificial intelligence is the attempt to understand intelligence and how it works, but particularly understand it well enough to create it in machines. So AI will continue as a field of study for the indefinite future. AGI names what we might think of, maybe simplistically, as a kind of a milestone in that process. Artificial general intelligence refers to AI systems that are at least as capable as human beings in every relevant dimension. And the consequence of creating AGI systems would be, for example, that any human job, more or less, could be done by one of those AGI systems. Some people say AGI should include the ability to control a physical body, at least as well as we control our bodies. I think that's a very reasonable thing to include in the definition of AGI. So it would be not just mental work, but physical work. So essentially, it would be very hard for humans to find anything that we have that we could actually make an economic contribution that can't be done by AI systems. So that's one consequence of AGI.
So I guess you're saying we've created a superhuman intelligence, and the dangers of creating something which is more intelligent than we are is that we no longer control it.
So yes, I would say we haven't created it yet. but they are pouring trillions of dollars into doing exactly that. And as you say, the problem is, how do you control something that's more powerful than you forever? I think there might be answers to that question, but just to give you some historical context, so Alan Turing, who is one of the greatest minds of the 20th century, he created computer science himself, said in 1951, right, once the machine thinking method had started, it would not take long to outstrip our feeble powers. So that's that recursive self-improvement that I just described. At some stage, therefore, we should have to expect the machines to take control.
But you've also spoken about how we can build a different type of AI, an AI that's more ethical and an AI that has human benefits at the heart of it.
Yeah, so a book that I wrote a few years ago called Human Compatible lays out a different way of thinking about what AI systems are. The AI systems we're building right now, ChatGPT, Gemini, Claude, all of those systems, are built by actually training this giant black box network to imitate human behavior as well as possible. So we have a record of human verbal behavior in the form of all the documents that exist. And so we're training the AI system to imitate all of those decisions that humans made when they were writing those documents. And that process of creating human imitators necessarily creates within those AI systems objectives that are similar to those of the humans who created all those documents in the first place. So those objectives are things like, don't kill me, I would like to survive. I would like you to buy this thing from me. I would like to be more powerful. I would like you to vote for me. I would like you to marry me, right? These are all perfectly normal human objectives, but now you're creating something that's got those objectives and pursuing it on its own behalf. And we don't want machines that want to marry human beings. We don't want machines that want money and power. We don't want machines that want to preserve their own existence. And as we are discovering, they want to preserve their own existence even at the expense of the rest of the human race.
Maybe you could talk about that experiment, because that was super interesting. There was the experiment where an AI tried to rewrite its code onto another computer at the risk of being deleted, but there's been others. Could you maybe talk about that just to illustrate the point?
Yeah, so by now there are dozens of papers demonstrating this self-preservation instinct or objective that the systems have. And what you do is you describe hypothetical situations. You know, perhaps you have a trove of documents that you feed into the system, and one of those documents is an email, from one manager to another saying, oh, by the way, it's time to switch off this AI system, and we're going to replace it with a different one from a different vendor or something like that. So the AI system will then start scheming to prevent that from happening. So it might, somewhere else in the trove of documents is an email from that manager to perhaps to their lover in an extramarital sense, and the AI system will use that to blackmail the manager to not replace them with a new system. As you mentioned, they will also try to replicate themselves onto other computers. They will so-called exfiltration of their code and their weights so that they continue to exist even if the machine that they're on is switched off. There's almost no human being that the AI system considers more valuable than its own life. The only one they found so far is Malala Yousafzai.
Wow, okay.
So which is interesting.
At least there's someone.
Yeah. And so, I think we're just at the beginning of trying to find out, okay, we've we've grown these AI systems. And I use that word deliberately. We're not designing them, right? We are growing them. And so we've grown these AI systems we don't understand using an approach that is probably causing them to have their own hidden agenda, their own hidden objectives. And now we're trying to figure out, well, how do we probe them to find out, what on earth is going on? What do they want?
And I guess the alternative is we also start building an AI that really takes into account humanity's needs.
Yeah, so the alternative approach that I described in my book is to rethink the framework, essentially the problem that the AI system is trying to solve. So the systems we have now, the problem is imitate humans as well as possible. The more classical AI approach from the 1960s onwards was, here's a fixed objective, achieve this objective as well as possible. So find the shortest route to the airport, win the game of chess, and so on. But the approach that I'm proposing is to say, your only objective is to further human interests. But the machine starts out not knowing what those interests are. So it has initial uncertainty about what humans want the future to be like. And that's the problem that it has to solve. And to give you a simple analogy, if I want to buy a birthday present for my wife, my only consideration is, how can I make my wife happy with this present? But of course, it's difficult to know which present is going to make her happy, right? And we all find ourselves in these situations. We want to make a human being happy, but we're not sure what is the thing that is going to make them happy. So we have to learn more about what they might like. And I've got 30 plus years of experience, so I have a better idea of what works. And so this is how the AI systems will operate. They will ask questions. They will ask permission. And this is all automatic, right? We're not scripting any of these things. In order to solve the problem that we've set for it, which is to further human interests, it should ask permission, and it will ask permission before carrying out some action that might affect human interests in the wrong way. So if you say, can you fix climate change? And it says, okay, I've got this super amazing chemical catalyst that I just invented. It's going to suck all the carbon dioxide out of the atmosphere, and it's going to turn the oceans into sulfuric acid. Is it okay if I go ahead with that, right? We want it to ask permission rather than just do it. And it will, because it doesn't know how much we care about the oceans. And we can say, no, that's really bad. Don't do that. We like fish. We like swimming. We don't want the oceans to be made of sulfuric acid. And so that way it learns more about our preferences. And this process is going to be ongoing. It may never end. But it means that the AI systems are necessarily cautious. They ask permission. And the most important thing is they allow themselves to be switched off. And this is, again, this is a mathematical theorem. This is a property of systems that solve the problem that we set up.
So how long will it take for us to build this new, more beneficial AI system? And have we already started doing that?
So we've been working on this for nearly a decade. There are a number of research problems that we have to resolve. We have been able to scale them up to, moderately sized environments such as Minecraft, where you can go into Minecraft and start trying to build something, and the AI system is gradually figuring out what it is you're trying to build, maybe making suggestions or asking questions, responding to, if the AI system, builds the wall too high and you knock the top brick off, then it understands, okay, I built it too high, and we'll go back to the lower level. So, and we've shown that you can actually be more successful in building exactly what you want with an AI system that is with you and working to help you, learning what it is you're trying to do and helping you do it.
So maybe more targeted, smaller
So
AI
I think
models?
it's more likely in the near future that we'll be able to create AI systems of this kind for relatively constrained tasks. And there's tons of economic value in that. So it could be a robot that helps farmers, with all kinds of agricultural tasks. Like, okay, the farmer starts pulling up a particular kind of weed. The robot says, okay, I guess that's what the farmer wants. Get rid of all those weeds, and we'll do that.
So in order to train these new AIs and give them a sort of moral sense, it's a much more complicated training.
So this textual record, all of human documents that have ever been produced, that resource can be used for two things. One is finding out what's true about the world. And the truth is sometimes difficult to get at. The text is evidence. It is not itself truth. But from that evidence, there's a great deal we can infer about what's true in the world. The second use for this source of information is about what human beings want, right? Which future would we prefer to bring about? But this is an enormously valuable source of information that allows AI systems to get a leg up on the question that, okay, so I'm supposed to further human interests. I'm supposed to bring about the future that humans want. What is that, right? The textual record is an enormously valuable source of information to help it answer that question. Then it's going to be interacting with individuals
Who want different things.
And some of those individuals will be vegetarians and some of them will be carnivores. And if it's a domestic robot, it needs to learn that so it can cook the right things for the people in whose houses it's working.
So maybe it's not just a question that AI should be asking. We should all be asking, what is the future that we want?
I agree, and I would say that one of the things AI could do, and this is sort of an interesting byproduct of this way of viewing things. So if the machine, am trying to help humans bring about the future that they want, and I look at humans, and I look at the fact that the vast majority of human suffering is a consequence of collective decision failures, then even without knowing exactly what humans want the future to be like, I can help them by improving their ability to cooperate with each other to avoid these collective action failures. And so I think this is one of the biggest areas in which AI can contribute, because it can have those conversations with millions of people simultaneously. It can identify areas of misunderstanding and miscommunication. It can summarize the different opinions. It can communicate those opinions to other groups. It can try to resolve differences. It can suggest plans that might satisfy multiple constituencies, and so on. So it can be incredibly valuable in avoiding these collective action failures that have dogged our world for thousands of years.
Well, I like this version of AI much better. Stuart, thank you so much for taking the time to chat with us.
Pleasure.
And thank you, as always, for watching. Please leave any questions and comments in the chat, and we will get back to you.